Hello and welcome back. Today we're doing another how-to video, and this time we are doing Necrons. I normally don't show this point, but it's been quite a few episodes since I have, so we are going to do the priming to start this video out. As always, I like to use this Vallejo surface primer. Just give it a nice little shake real quick. Now, you can use spray primer if you want. It is a lot quicker, and I don't blame you if that's kind of your preferred method. But honestly, I kind of prefer we're using a pretty terrible brush today, if it'll focus. It's my priming brush. But I really prefer the brush primer for a couple of reasons. Number one, well, first and foremost, it doesn't have to be thinned, which is great. You can just put it right on your model. Don't have to worry about any water being mixed with it. It is very thin already. You can airbrush this on if you want. But honestly, just brushing it on by hand, it's not very, it doesn't take that long. It's pretty efficient, and it's kind of relaxing. Like, you don't have to worry about being messy or clean with it, whatever. You just have to worry about covering your model, right? I know spray primers are a lot quicker, but they are a little bit kind of tricky. I've seen a lot of cases where people will use spray primer and they'll get this like weird dusty effect, whether it's just stored improperly or they're priming in the wrong temperatures or whatever, right? It's very kind of temperature sensitive. If it's too hot or too cold, you're gonna get a weird kind of finish, and this you don't have to worry about that with this. It stores a lot nicer. There's no like odor to it, so you don't have to worry about keeping it in your house or in your garage, whatever. You can paint with it inside, which is nice. You don't have to have like a whole specialized setup to get rid of fumes. And generally, it's just like way less of a hassle to me. Between this and like airbrushing or like spray primers or anything, this is honestly like there's no hassle behind it. You just put it on your model, nothing else to worry about, and that's nice if you just want a real quick, no setup required kind of deal. And I will say, I think I bought this can or bottle rather at like, I don't know, 15-20 bucks for the whole thing, and I've primed like a couple hundred models with it, and I've barely used any. It lasts forever, essentially. I think it's still like 80% full, maybe even 90. There's just so much in there. One or two models takes like 2 drops of primer, so it's really not a lot at all. But that's all my pros and cons. Of course, you prime and paint however you want. Just make sure that you do put a primer on your model, please. It'll save you so much pain and heartbreak. It also kind of keeps your paint on your model a little bit better, just for like durability reasons. If you're not doing like a varnish or anything, I would highly recommend it. And it's just one of those extra steps that kind of makes things easy on you. So always remember to do that. I will say though, depending on what paint you're using, it's kind of not as necessary. I think GW, like standard base paint, is technically a little bit of a primer in itself. I know the spray stuff is at least, it's like a primer and base all in one. But the standard paint as well is also pretty decent, just sticking onto a model without primer, but much easier just to do it this way. And you can see it's only been about 4 minutes, and I'm pretty much already done almost. There's just a few little spots that I kind of need to get in and out of. This probably would have been better as a sub-assembly, but whatever. I like doing things the hard way, apparently. And as we kind of near completion, I want to talk a little bit about the kind of paint scheme I'm going to use. I do like box standard Necrons. I think they look fine on their own. But I found this really nice paint scheme that I really want to try out. I think it was on like Tumblr or something that I saw someone was painting them. Like purple and white and gold. And I think that would be really cool, and I really want to try it for myself. So I am shamelessly stealing the idea. And the last little bit we need is just the back of this leg. So annoying, but there we are. And make sure our brush is nice and cleaned off after that. We are going to be moving on to our first base layer. We could, if we really wanted to torture ourselves, start with a white, but we're going to start with like a off-white first. And just a second here. Got two different options. If you don't have one or the other, just kind of go with whatever is best for you. I want to do Gray Seer just because it's more of a direct route. But if you don't have Gray Seer for some reason, Wraithbone is a good kind of in-between layer as well. But I do have Gray Seer, so we're not going to worry about that. And going with a decent size 2 brush. You can get these off Amazon really cheap. Make sure it's nice and watered down before you put any paint on your brush. We are going to be applying this Gray Seer pretty much all over to start with. And make sure we don't get too much going on our palette here. You can kind of see, well, maybe you can't. Our paint was just a little bit too watery there. You can kind of see bubbles in it. And that's a good indication of your paint having a little bit too much water. But we should be good to go now. Our paint is kind of nice and dry. Well, our primer at least. So we're going to move on to our first base coat of Gray Seer. And we're going to do this on basically all of the armor panels. You can get all of the joints in between too if you want. You don't have to worry about being kind of precise or clean or anything. But we are going to be doing all the joints with gold in the end, so it's kind of, like don't really waste your time focusing on it if you don't get it. And all of the big armor panels are kind of the priority for this layer, because these are going to end up white, and going from gray to white is much easier the lighter color gray it is. The primer itself is already pretty light, but it's not really a decent enough layer to start with, honestly. It doesn't have the right kind of coverage. And it's always good to have a little bit of a buffer layer. It kind of makes your things look neater if you end up missing an area. And the bottom of the legs as well. We are going to keep our brush nice and clean in between every few spots, just so we don't get paint drying on our brush. Hopefully we get things lasting a little bit longer here. And right back to it. We are kind of going with all of the weird angles today, unfortunately. It's kind of always what happens to us with these videos. I always get weird camera angles going right off the bat. But it's for a good cause. I want to make sure that we do get all of these little nooks and crevices as well as we can. I also want to mention, normally I get to use a paint handle, which is great. I've got very shaky hands, and that kind of helps things not be so much of an issue. Unfortunately, I think this is the 40 millimeter base, which is what this came with. I'm pretty sure. I built this guy like, I think 6 months ago or something. It's just been sitting in a box somewhere. But unfortunately, my paint handle doesn't go to that size, which kind of sucks. But I think it's kind of a big enough base that we should be fine, kind of on its own. And we are ripping right along through here. Do want to get into some of these second coats as our paint does start to dry, just to get us ready for our next layers. Also for this, we're not going to be using that many paints, which is kind of nice. With our Space Marines, I feel like the last few projects we've done like tons and tons of different paints. Usually I have like between 8 and like 12 different paints ready to go, including washes and everything. This one I have like 6, so it's much easier of a project to get into if your palette is kind of limited. And we don't have like any little decorations to do, so we don't really need to worry about having a paint to do just one little area like we would with Space Marines. But we will tread on nonetheless and just kind of clean up everything we kind of can. We just want to make this nice and perfect for when we apply our white. Kind of the nicer you have your base layer here put on, the better the white will kind of appear. And that is what this is all about. Undercoating is very important. We also want to get the other arm here. For the purple that I want to do, I'm using a contrast paint, or I will be using a contrast paint at least. And I'm kind of not sure how that's going to look. The Imperial Fist that we did last time ended up looking great, so I'm hoping it kind of stays going that way. I've only used this specific paint before to do like little tiny details, like the little wax seals. So we'll see how it handles going on kind of a larger scale, but overall I think it should be fine. And just doing one kind of last look, I think we want to do a little bit more on the legs, and then we should be ready to move on to our next layer. Remember, while we do this, make sure your paint is nice and thin so we can do multiple layers without having to worry about it. If you have too much paint on your brush at the same time, it's also going to give you the same effect, so you want to be careful of that. Just generally kind of take things in moderation, you know? You don't want too much building up too quickly. Otherwise, your model is going to look a little bit rough. And make sure we get under the legs. We also are going to be doing the base kind of towards the end of this. I'm sure this will be like a 3-part video at the least, maybe 2-part if we're really quick. But I do want to do the base at some point, and we have like a kind of easy method to do that. Just using some Vallejo kind of earth texture. And because these are Necrons, they're kind of perfect for doing sand. So I have an excuse to use that once again. But I swear at some point I will get some new basing textures. We'll get some like Mars textures and stuff, so that we can do our armies a little bit nicer in the future with some more diversity. Because right now everything either goes on a mud base or a sand base, and I do kind of want to change that going forward. And I think we're looking pretty good here. Of course, it's not perfect, but it's close enough. Speed is kind of a factor in this, and I want to get us moving right along. Make sure we close that up nice and tight so that doesn't dry out. And our next layer is going to be Corax White. Give it a nice little shake because I haven't used it in a while. And right back to having thin layers, as always. And you can see this is a much brighter shade than our gray was, of course. And hopefully it looks just as nice. Make sure we don't have too much in our brush. And oh, that's already looking pretty mint. I think this is going to look great when we're done. Hopefully everything else just kind of comes along just as nicely, but I can't promise anything. This is a brand new paint scheme, I guess. I've never really even done Necrons before. I have a bunch of them from the starter like command pack that was out like 2 years ago now. I think it was out around the same time Indomitus came out, which was cool. I like Space Marines, I like Necrons, so it was a good pack. But now it's all Tyranids, I think, ever since the launch of 11th edition. And I like Tyranids a lot too, so it works. It really works out in my favor. Unfortunately, I did not end up getting the Indomitus box itself. I'm still a little bit sad about that, because a lot of the models in it I really liked, and maybe at some point I'll pick it up like secondhand, but as the days go by, I just see the prices kind of rising on them, and I just don't think it's going to happen. Unless I end up seeing one at like a game store heavily discounted for some reason, I don't think I'll ever pick it up. Same thing with like the new boxes that keep coming out. Like, I like Death Company, don't get me wrong, but I don't really have a reason to go out and buy a whole box. And, you know, that just dropped, so I don't think I'll be getting that anytime soon, but it would be cool to get. It's kind of a nice little starter for an army. And I do like my Blood Angels, so maybe someday I'll look into it. It's one of those things, if I happen upon it in like my local game store, maybe, but I'm not going to go out of my way to get it. I do like the boxes though. GW, please keep it up. Definitely keep releasing new army boxes. I like variety and I like value packs. So I almost said value meals there. I like those too, but no, value packs. Same thing with the paint brushes and starter kits. I really like those. I do wish there was a kit that was just like all of GW's base paints in one big box. Like all of their bases, all of their layers, all of the, their contrast. Put them all into like box sets. I don't know why that's not an option already, honestly. I mean, I realize it'd be really expensive, but, would it be much worse than like the Cadia Stands box? Being like $250? Just give me something like that. Let me buy all of your boxes or all of your paints at once. It's all I beg of you for. And there we are. We're chugging along here pretty quickly. Still going to take us a few episodes, but we are tearing through progress-wise at a pretty good speed, I think. And we will do the... I'm kind of debating where I want all of the white to be, just because like the arms get a little bit wacky with that. But I think if we do like these little support struts, if I kept things in focus, that'd be nice. And then everything else around it will kind of make like silver. I think that'd be a kind of good trade-off. And we want to get under the arms. We also want to get under those shoulder pads. Almost missed that. That would have been horrible. Finish off this whole model just to realize that we didn't do like the entire underside. It's pretty on par with something I would do, unfortunately, but I promise I'm trying to do a little bit better. And of course, make sure our brush is nice and cleaned off. I see paint is already starting to dry on our bristles, and I don't want that. And that also gives us a little bit of an opportunity to make sure our paint is staying nice and thin. Perfect. We'll go right back into doing our armor plates here. And get those legs once again. Kind of sucks having these arms in the way. Fortunately, I can't really see the legs too well here in the front, but it's fine. We'll kind of maneuver around them. And we will just work our way around again and again until this paint is looking pristine, because that is what we're here for. Perfect paint jobs. That is our goal. Not that I will ever achieve perfection, but we can get close, right? It's like the Emperor's Children thing. You're just in a constant strive for perfection until you realize that you're ruining yourself in the process. It's a good allegory. Man, I also want to do Emperor's Children at some point. The like loyalist paint scheme, the purple and gold. It's a little bit like Paint Marines, good lord, Ultramarines-esque. It's just a little bit of a color swap, but man, it looks cool. And being the Ultramarines fanboy that I am, I definitely want to paint something like that very soon. And while we're here, we'll go right back over some of these little panels that aren't 100% perfect. And we have like a couple minutes left. I like to keep these at about 20 minutes esque. But we will do a tiny little bit of gold, and I'll just kind of show you what my vision here is as we kind of wrap things up. I do want to do a quick little shout out. As always, I have a Patreon. Link is in the description. If you guys like these videos and you want to see more, feel free to check that out. Everything that goes into that goes right back into the channel. Whether we're doing new paints, new models, new brushes, whatever. All of that goes right back into the creative process. So definitely check that out if that's something you're interested in. Otherwise, don't worry about it. No need to give any of your hard-earned cash to me. I'm not demanding it, but it does help the process out just a little bit. moving on, we are doing our Retributor armor. Try saying that 10 times fast. And we're going to be doing this for kind of all of the like joints and the everything that's basically not white. Not so much the blades, we're going to kind of leave those alone for now. But like this big spine piece here, my hands would ever stop shaking, it would help greatly. But we want to do all of this with our gold and make sure it stays nice and thin. Metallic paint tends to layer really weirdly if it's too thick, so that's something you really want to watch out for. A little bit more so than you normally would have to worry about with your standard base paints. And we'll actually make sure it's a little bit thicker just for moving forward. And we're going to do this on basically all of the joints. I'll end this here in just a second, but I do just want to give you a little bit of a kind of sneak peek what we'll be doing in the next episode. And if you can avoid it, try not to get any on your white armor panels, otherwise you're going to have to do cleanup. And to do that, it's the exact same process. Just start with Wraithbone, going over anything you mess up, and again, Corax White right above that. If you kind of miss a step there, it's going to look kind of weird and off-colored, so just be careful with that. But we're going to end it there. As always, I want to thank you guys very much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. You know, just kind of let me know how I'm doing, whether you want to see specific things going forward, any criticism you have, any of that. But other than that, again, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next episode.